Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce Jill Slupe and Brad Burklund with Exit Playbook. I found them on the internet recently, and I was very intrigued as I looked through their website. We've long contended here at the Focus Suites that you need to start considering your exit strategy when you're founding your company, and yet rarely does that happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Jill and Brad and let them tell us about Exit Playbook.
Good morning, everyone. We are very excited to be here. And hold on one sec. We did prepare some slides so that we would stay in that 20-minute window, and we'll just jump into it. We'll do a couple introductions. So my name is Jill Slupe, and I started Exit Playbook about 5 years ago. I own Verity Martin, which is a sales agency. So we work with businesses on sales process. And about 5 years ago, I recognized more than half of our current clients were all preparing their business to exit. And then I started working with an accountant and a lawyer and discussing exit planning. And I'm going to let Brad introduce himself, and then I'll tell you about the rest of the story.
Terrific. Yeah, my background is my career was with Walker Tire. Some of you may recognize the name. There's stores in Lincoln and Omaha. We owned the stores here in Omaha. I sold that business. It was a family business. My father had come to Omaha from the original person that started the business in Lincoln. There's a family in Lincoln that still owns the stores there. And in our family, we had my brother and I bought my father out, and then my brother bought me out of that business. So I did several business transitions, and I was in that business for about 31 years. And when I got out, I realized that there were some pieces that I felt were missing in that exit process. And so I set up a consulting company working with business owners and mostly family business and dealing with the issues and dealing with putting together a good exit strategy and putting all the pieces together. So it's been very rewarding and love it very much. So Jill and I met actually through Rotary and got together, and we had a discussion and talked about Exit Playbook. She's going to give you a little bit of history about Exit Playbook itself and the project and kind of how it's come to fruition. So it's exciting stuff.
So I have to tell you, I'm kind of excited that Steve found us because Exit Playbook really only launched in August. So we're about officially 6 weeks old. So about 5 years ago, I started having conversations with some peers about people with succession. And I'm sure John and Ingrid can relate to some of the stories that the banker and the accountant and myself all heard. We were then asked by a couple banks, well, one bank initially, and then word of mouth got around to do some training for succession planning. So the three of us did some training, and it was fascinating. What we learned was people would sign up for the training, but then not show up. And the reason was they didn't want people to know. And I went back and I did a lot of interviews with those business owners to understand why. And they just didn't want anyone to know. They didn't want their employees or their wives or their partners or anyone to know. And so what we learned is that typically that business owner was male. They worked 70 plus hours, and they didn't have debt, but the company was the retirement plan, right? All their money was pretty much tied up with that business. They were at least 60, and they were very, very dedicated to their employees. And so I did a lot of market research. In fact, it took about 3.5 years. And about that time frame, I met Brad and really started diving into that profile of that business owner, and really through the interviews developed a different platform. So just so you understand the dynamic of the target market in Iowa and Nebraska, you'll see that the age breakdown here, but there are a little over 30,000 businesses in Iowa and Nebraska that are over 60 years old. So we thought that the market was ripe for looking and rolling this out. So what we did was we developed an online platform. Our goal when we started this 18 months ago, the seriousness of it was to have 30 experts on the site and 300 users. And what we came to discover was we really needed business experts on the site, because not the accountant, not the lawyer, not myself, not the exit planners had all the expertise that a business owner needs when they're doing their succession planning or their succession in general. Our next steps were we developed the brand, we recruited 20 experts to get the site up and running. Then we actually designed the site, we developed the marketing, and then we did some testing in June and July, and then we launched in August. Our marketing efforts were pretty extensive, and I'm going to actually, Brad, if you kind of want to talk a little bit, I'm just going to take people to the site real quick and just do a quick, just so they can kind of see what it looks like.
Okay. You mean talk about the marketing piece?
Yeah, or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So with the marketing, we understand that our target market is that 60-year-old male saying that, hey, these are the baby boomers. They're, in the process of trying to figure out what to do about my retirement, about succession of my company, and they may have different ideas. So our marketing efforts are kind of designed to go to that. They're less quote unquote technical. We do some, regular snail mail. We do a lot of email stuff. We do have social media presence, but a vast majority of our focus is on, a list of those business owners and then focusing on them on a regular basis, and then giving them different tools that they can use to help put their own exit strategy together.
So once you sign into the site, it's free to sign in. In fact, everyone today, I'll give you a code to try the site out for 30 days. You're welcome to test it out. But what we have is exercises right off the bat on how to value your business on the back of an envelope, who to sell to, and then a step-by-step process. Everything is basically rolled into these 5 areas. And the most popular that we have found is prepare the owner. And the other component there is they all want to know how they're going to get paid. So the website is, we have experts on the site. So 20 of them, everything from an accountant, lawyer, banker, exit planner, psychologist, leadership coach, etc. And they pay a small fee to be on the site. Then the business owner pays a fee. That's our model for profitability. And then they read about these topics. Then they might click on who wrote the article. Then you'll learn about that person and their organization. And then you can actually see all the other content that person designed. Then the other component is to actually build your playbook. So it's a step-by-step process, and this is all dynamic. So depending on your model, if you're going to sell to family or sell to someone new, that aspect, or it's all dynamic. So you'll get different articles if you picked family, or if you were going to say you were going to liquidate. And then the last component is we do live training. We have probably, between 1 and 3 live trainings a month. About how to kind of prepare that. In fact, the one person that's designing their business plan, this might be a great seminar for you on September 28th. It's a 3-hour class that really walks through, it's put on by Core Bank and Nebraska Enterprise Fund. So just a little bit about the site. We'll give all of you a little code. So if you want to come and scope it out more, you're welcome to.
So we really designed the site. We really, in the very first part, the landing page, we really looked at the owners and what are the first questions that they're asking. And so then we picked actual exercises where they could hopefully take that first step, because the largest concern or the biggest obstacle that we've found is just getting the business owners to take that first step to get started in the process. They tend to procrastinate. It's not a burning fire for them today, but knowing that they need to do it. And so we tried to make it as exercises that would lead them into taking that first step. So hence why we talked about what's the value of my business, so that they have ability to just give themselves a thumbnail sketch of what my business might be worth. And then the second exercise is, who do I want to sell to? Because they have different ideas on who that might be, what that might look like, and help them walk through what questions do I need to ask to be able to do that. And we really, the site is designed to be a connector. It's designed to be able to bring qualified leads in on one side of those business owners and then connect them to the experts that can give them the help that they need in creating their exit plan. And so that's why it's so critical in all of the stuff that we do, that we have those connection pieces where they can click on that presenter or that the author of an article, and they can connect directly over to their profile, and they have the ability then to connect directly to them. They don't have to go through Exit Playbook. They can connect directly to that expert or to that firm and start that process with someone that they're comfortable with. You know, many times the experts don't have a good way of getting out in front of the business owners in such a way that's different than, you know, the shotgun blast marketing that you see every day. It's more of a soft approach of saying, here's some content that we've found that is helping our clients, and hopefully that speaks to the business owners, and then they'll make a connection and say, I'd really like to have coffee with you and sit down and discuss this.
So that's kind of overview of the site, overview kind of the marketing. And then the one other piece that we've really put a lot of energy into is what we refer to as our affiliate marketing. So we have partnered with several organizations to share this information. As Brad alluded, the hardest part is getting people to start. It's interesting. I was working with one of the Verity Martin clients, and they were so excited. They were planning this big trip to California to go to the Napa region to wine tasting. I said, so how many hours did you actually spend planning that vacation? And he thought about it. He's like, well, probably 10. He's like, no, probably 15 if you include all the dinners and the wine tastings and the hotel and everything. I was like, well, that's interesting. How many hours this month have you spent planning your business exit? And, you know, he hadn't spent 15 hours in the whole year. So the big push is really for us is just to get business owners started. And so we've been pushing or coordinating with a lot of affiliate marketing. Core Bank sent out an invite to have people to test out the site to kind of get started. We've worked with other firms that are on the site. Some women's organization, the MOWBC, Nebraska Bankers Association has asked us to be part of their training. And then the Nebraska Economic Development. So anyhow, that's kind of a quick overview. I thought if you guys have specific questions, we can go back to either the website or the marketing and address those and just kind of open it up for questions.
This is Steve. Have you guys found that the exits are even tougher in small rural areas? Or have you reached out to that community or not? I guess I would urge you both to reach out to Grow Nebraska and or REAP. They deal a lot with rural businesses. And I know oftentimes rural businesses really have a hard time finding buyers and that sort of thing. And your resources might be very valuable there.
Sure. We have been partnering with the Nebraska Enterprise or Nebraska Enterprise Fund. They're on the site. And then the Nebraska Economic Development in that rural areas, Cheryl Hyatt and her team. So we've done several demos and given them resources to use the site. Rural is definitely a big need. And they'll tell story after story how they'll have a business on Main Street that if that closes, it impacts traffic flow for all the other businesses on Main Street. So having, exit planning in those rural markets is critical. It's one of the main reasons Brad and I have invested all this time to create this platform. And I'll be honest, Grow Nebraska is on my list. And if you have any influence, we would love to present at their next conference. So just to get the word out and to share, because again, we're game. It's all about just getting people started. The average transaction for exiting takes about 7 years. So you want to start making that decision now. Who should buy it, right? If you're going to create a roller rink, a year from now, who should buy that 10 years from now? And thinking that long term, we're big believers in that. So
Jill, you mentioned Grow Nebraska and a contact, have you reached out to them directly or just through their website?
No, to tell you the truth, I've just gotten a referral to them from NPPD, Nebraska
Public Power District.
And I haven't made it. It's on my list. I'll be honest, but
okay,
it will move up my list.
I can give you a couple of contacts with them too.
Okay. If you want to put that in chat, that would be great, and I'll use you as a reference, Greg.
Absolutely.
Other questions for Jill and Brad?
I had the experience of Leadership Resources. I had a 3-month sabbatical when I was there on doing succession planning. And the biggest challenge, and I found, and this may impact how you are reaching out to people, is most businesses are entrepreneurial driven. And the business is their baby, and they don't want to give it up. And so one of the pieces I integrated into the passing baton piece that I put together was through the book, The Speed of Trust. And just to engage people, and I've had the unique opportunity to work with about 5 businesses that went through successioning. And I think you're doing a lot of the right things through media, but if you can establish a process where you're establishing some trust with them, not just the value of their business, but who they are first, I think that has a lot to do with people opening up a little more in terms of wanting to share and recognize it. I've used that on here before, but Ron Eklund was my accountant for many years with HBE, and I asked him when I started my sabbatical paper on successioning, I said, how soon do you encourage people to start doing their exit strategy or successioning? And his answer was the day you open your door.
We agree.
And I know you talked about the 60-year-olds, but I think there's an opportunity to look at, and I'd like to visit with you guys offline, but okay. I think there's opportunities for getting out to the people that are in their 50s and their 40s that are having business to get them thinking about it now. Now, I realize the most logical are those that are in your target market. But anyway, great presentation. Thank you.
So, John, let me ask you a quick question. What did you find out of that book that was helpful?
Out of Speed of Trust? I would say the biggest thing out of Speed of Trust for me was establishing the relationship with the individual first, or if you're talking about Speed of Trust, even within your own business or company, having trust relationship with your employees and having the and also from the standpoint of not only the trust but transparency. So to me, the two biggest things were relationship and transparency.
Okay, great, thanks.
You know, the other reason having a plan in place is so important, no matter what your age is.
Exactly.
We had a tragic situation over a year ago where we had a Focus Suite member pass away at a very young age. And, you know, there were some issues in trying to get that business wrapped up and so forth. So, you absolutely need some sort of a plan in place, someone that would take over, and if nothing else, shut the business down for you if necessary. So even if you have nothing you can sell.
I think I can share this. I think I've used an example on here. Judson Irrigation, Judson Bileen, has been a good friend of mine for years, and I had the opportunity to work with him. And his one-liner was, John, you're right, I need to get something in place before I get hit by a beer truck. and that's his subtle way of saying they had to move forward, which they did.
Other questions for Jill and Brad?
This is Gina. I have a couple comments and maybe a question. When I wrote my business plan, and I just celebrated 15 years last Friday, actually.
Congrats.
Outstanding.
Congratulations.
Thank you. My business, wherever I got my business plan template from, had suggested writing an exit plan. There was actually a section in the business plan for an exit plan, and it really made me think about it as I was leaving my corporate world and getting into moving back to rural Midwest and becoming an entrepreneur of how am I going to get out of this? And, what are those key triggers that are going to make me want to leave, or at least maybe not leave, but review that. And the comment I guess I would have, and maybe it's a question, is I think every business is different from as a bed and breakfast owner. I might be ready to retire, but it may take 5 years to sell this business. So if I put the sign in the yard, is that going to deter my guests from coming? And it's kind of a rhetorical question, because back to what John was just saying, I have been extremely transparent with all of my guests in that I love doing what I do, but I am not going to do this forever. And, there were reasons I did it for X number of years. And, so if I do put it up for sale, it could sell in a week or it could sell in 5 years. So any comments or suggestions to everybody, and maybe you're not me or me, but about when do you put that sign in the yard, or do you ever, or do you keep it behind the scenes and kind of work it? Because I also think some of my guests that I am transparent with could be one of my buyers. So I always want to think that way too.
Yeah. Well, I guess we would probably suggest doing some preliminary homework. So, like what you would ask to sell it, what conditions would you like, who would you actually like to sell to? So there is some preliminary pieces that you could do pre-planning before you are ready to put out your sign, and to actually make a list of who do you think you would like to have buy it. And then, when you're ready, and I'm sure Brad will have better advice. He works with more customers than I do, but, but being ready is that key piece, I think.
I think that the definition, like Jill is talking about, I think is key to that, Gina. I think if you sit down and do the numbers, if you use the Exit Playbook, the template we have, or the Build Your Playbook, it talks about several of those things. But basically finding out what kind of a financial target you have, where you're at actually. And then if you go through and do preliminarily, how does that type of business, how does a bed and breakfast get sold? What does it get sold on? What are the metrics? How does it look? And then you'll know, can I reach my financial targets with that? And then also creating a profile of who you really would like to see buy that business, because you care about as much the guests as much as the guests care about, where they're staying and that relationship with you. And so if you build that profile in your mind, you'll be amazed at how your thinking can change as you're seeing guests come in, and you can start to identify, this person kind of fits in that. And you maybe have a private conversation, or people you meet on the street, you have a pretty good idea in your mind of what you might want that to look like, so that you're constantly working that direction.
Right. Thank you.
Jill and Brad, what's your feeling about having a sign out front? My personal opinion is what you were talking about, Brad, is much more important than a sign in the yard. In fact, I think a sign would be a deterrent.
I would agree with that. In most cases, in most cases, it's very difficult. My personal opinion, it's very difficult to run a business when you have a for sale sign out in front of it.
Amen.
Because it affects not only, the owners, I think, somewhat grasp it, but it's amazing how much ripple effect it has in a marketplace for a business. If they find out you're trying to sell it, it affects your employees. They don't know that all of a sudden their future's unsure. They may start looking for jobs. It may affect your customers. They may say, well, how long is my supply going to be? And it affects also your competitors, because they're going to be the quickest ones to spread the word and say, hey, did you know that John's thinking about selling this business, or Gina's thinking about selling this business? Maybe you should think about, doing business with us just to, protect yourself. So I'm not a big proponent of putting a quote unquote sign out front. I think there's ways that you can tactfully do it and still get the word out to people that, you will be more protected.
When I sold my business in 2004, I used to own Keo office furniture, and I had a buyer in place. But the process we wanted to do is to make it as seamless as possible for our customers, our employees, and our vendors. and have that in place before we even announced that we were selling the business. Because I had all makes, and I had Eeks, and I had everybody else around that were competitors. And the rumor did finally get out. And of course, they were jumping all over the client saying, hey, while they were saying, oh, he's shutting down. Of course, they create their own adaptation to succession.
Oh, yes.
So that's great, Brad. Yeah.
Yeah. And Gina, one last thing I would add. I think one of the keys that business owners a lot of times don't realize is, if you're selling it to someone inside of your business or whatever, a lot of times the financing piece becomes a big scenario. Whether you are capable or have the desire to be a partial or whole financer of a purchase of your business can really weigh in. So I think it's great to go through some of those exercises, several years in advance, and I think you become much more prepared.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we probably have time for one more question before Jill and Brad need to hop off the call. So does anybody else have a question for them?
Do you find that a lot of times your pushback is that you run into the person that says, okay, no, or thinks no one can run this business like me, thus, it's going to go to whatever if I sell it or whatever. And on the other hand, there's that fear of them that this is all I know. What do I do after this? Because you mentioned coaching, right? When you were talking about it, is the coaching part for those people that, okay, there is life outside of this. There are other people that could handle this. So.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump on that or you, Jill?
Go ahead.
So if you look at the statistics, the piece that you brought up there is absolutely true. There's the fear that no one else can run it the way you do. And I think there also is a fear that maybe someone can run it better than I do. And I don't want to know that. One of the key components in the process that we really focus on, that's a huge focus of mine, is you don't go from something, you go to something. And you can't be walking away because it's, you think it's time to get out. You need to figure out what that next thing is. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, business owners that sell their business and don't have a plan of what to do, 75% regret selling their business within 1 year. So it's absolutely critical that you figure out what is that next thing for me. And then as I'm working with clients, that's one of my things. That's why the window is longer, is that I want them to take baby steps. Jill does a great job with her clients of saying, hey, you need to take an hour a week. And then all of a sudden it's, 3 hours a week. And then it's a day a week, so that they can work themselves into that next thing and kind of work that direction. So you're not just stopping cold turkey, so to speak. Does that answer your question?
Well, as you're talking about this, I know someone that they're in their 60s. They work probably 70 plus hours. They're in charge. No one else can do it, whatever. And it's like, okay, you're getting to the point that, okay, maybe the beer truck will hit you. Who knows? But where's your succession? Where's your exit? Are you going to continue to just work that till you drop? Or, at this point in time, you probably should be thinking of exit strategy. Only, that's a touchy subject that I don't want to bring up to him. So,
well, Jody, feel free to give them the code and have them come and check out the site.
Yeah.
They can try it free for 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and it's one of those that I'm not sure I want to suggest it to them because again,
okay. Well, if you want to give me their email, we'll mark it to them.
Yeah, there you go. And Jody, you might start with a question of, do you care what happens to your business?
Well, he comes from, his father had the business and he worked at probably 70, 80, and then the father died and now he's got it. And I'm seeing the same situation that, it's all consuming and everything, and the family kind of falls to the side, and it's like, I don't know that I want to make that suggestion to someone like that because of the fact that, you need to break that cycle. You need to start exiting out, spending time with your family, and, in your 60s, you're more than halfway there.
Right. Jill, tell the story about the bank, about them dealing with the family wanting to transition their business.
It's true. So I have a banker that, we work with. And so she was telling me about a meeting. So here she was, talking with the dad, and the succession plan was, it was exiting or transitioning to the son who was in their 60s. And all the baker kept thinking was, could we go to the grandchild and go to the 40s? And, but it's true, when the business is your baby, right? It's hard to give it up. And, so they don't want to start the thought process. Although it's so funny because Brad wants us to market to all the spouses of all the business owners. I haven't been able to find that list yet to have someone do the push. Like if your spouse tells you to get started, maybe you'll do it, or a kid.
Yeah.
So,
that's brilliant, Brad. Just brilliant.
Or not.
We haven't been successful yet. So,
but it's right because the wives or whatever, they can start hinting or whatever, or putting stuff out there without slap it upside your face and just, I think we should go to this meeting. And
well, maybe you need to share the code with the wife of the
Yes.
So, anyway.
And a lot of times the spouse has heard it for 5 years. I need to figure out what to do with this, et cetera. And, we think that it gives them a perfect opportunity to say, hey, here's something we could check out. Again, just to start that thought process and kind of take that first step is really a lot of times what it takes.
All right. Well, thank you, Jill and Brad, for being here today. That was great. Great information that every business owner can use. So thank you very much for your time today. Everybody that's on the call, please check out the chat. The code is there. And there's other good information that was shared in the chat. And Jill and Brad, we'll say goodbye to you so that you can get on to your next meeting. But thank you. Please join us next week for Stan Odenthal. Stan's got an interesting story to tell too. So check it out next week. And what's that?
The mugs.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Before you go, Jill and Brad, everybody hoist those coffee mugs up, and we'd like to have Jill and Brad pick out the winner of this week's coffee mug contest.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I got to tell you,
I defer to Jill.
Okay,
I like
Jill.
Doug's. He's got focus. Luke, what are you drinking? Sanitizer? Oh, okay. I think Doug's my winner. So, all right. Thank you,
Doug
guys.
Hancock.
So
all right.
Have a
you
great
are the
day.
winner. Thank you both, Jill and Brad, and good luck with your next meeting.
All right.
I'm
Bye.
going to leave this meeting open for another 5 minutes or so. So if you would like to talk with one another or exchange information, feel free to stay on the call and visit with one another.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Thank you, Steve.